Welcome to the Bound for Glory podcast. In this episode, we're talking to Paul Benjaman, an old friend of mine who's also a singer, songwriter, and all-around Tulsa music guy. It's a really great conversation. As a musician myself and a songwriter, I found it fascinating. I think it's a conversation you're really going to enjoy. Paul Michael Benjaman? Paul
Benjaman.
David Benjaman? I'm trying to guess it.
Oh, Paul Benjaman Carl Skint.
Oh, really?
First and middle. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Nice. So what made you decide to go with middle name as a performer?
For a while, I was a guitar player in a band called Rewake, and we were we were fairly prominent around the local scene, prominent and things like that. About the fifth time that the local newspapers mangled Carl Skint, it's a 10-letter name, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to pull a Robert Zimmerman, Bob Dylan, and just go first and middle. That'll be good. That's something people can grab.
That's funny because the first time I was really young and I had a guy, it was first like major gig I got to play was in Greenwich Village, and this guy was trying to be my manager, and it's probably a good thing I didn't sign a contract with him because I think he was kind of a little sleazy. But yeah, when he booked me up there, he was like, Schmitz, this doesn't work. And he's like, and so he made me go, my Dante Thomas is my middle name. And so for a minute I did the same thing, but then I came back to Oklahoma and I was like, this is stupid. I'm Schmitz.
I'm glad you did. Yeah.
But I didn't know that. Carlson, what kind of name is it?
It's a French and German kind of mishmash.
Nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. I thought like a couple of these guests, we've had several on that are people, I think they'd make good guests because you're somebody that I've known you for a while, but I also really don't know you that well. Like we were just kind of in passing, hey, what's up, man? How you doing? Good to see you. But I don't know, we've never really sat down and had a long conversation. So I thought, well, that'd be good to get to know you a little better and, talk about everything you've been doing with your life. So
yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for making the time. I'd start these with two questions for the guests that have nothing to do with the topic of the podcast, but it's a good icebreaker. And the first question, and you can answer them or you can just plead the fifth and say you don't want to answer for whatever reason.
Okay.
But the first question is, have you ever seen a UFO?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I have. If you define UFO, there was an article in the Dallas Observer that followed a famous ufologist. And he says that UFO to him was as long as you saw something in the sky and you can explain exactly what that was, that by definition, unidentified flying object.
Yeah.
So I've seen
can you describe what you
UFOs. Saw? Trying to remember like a specific instance. Sometimes you would see like a flashing light in the sky and it quickly disappear at what would seem to be at light speed. Yeah.
Moving quick.
Those kind of
orbed
things.
kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But none that you could pin down like, man, this one night I saw this and I definitely don't know what that was.
There's nothing that comes to mind right now. Yeah.
Enough of those late night drives back home from a gig. You'll see stuff.
Hangouts. Yeah, you see stuff. And you go, well, that could be a shooting star or something like that. But nothing that ever came like super close.
No abductions. No.
You would see, no abductions, nothing like that. No.
Okay.
No bodiless cows.
Most people, more than half the people I ask that to say yes, and then they have some kind of cool story that's like, oh, wow. Like some that, I don't want to say his name, but there's a musician around town that, I don't know if he would want everyone to know, but he had I asked him and he's like, actually, I got spotlit. And I was like, what? And he's like, they're driving home late at night in rural Oklahoma. And he thought it was a helicopter spotlighting them, but it was after a while, they're like, what are they looking at us for? And then it disappears. And it's like an orb that he sees shoot across the sky. And he's like, whatever that was, it wasn't a helicopter.
No. I have seen the semi-famous spook light out in the corner of Oklahoma around the Miami area.
I don't know if I know what that is.
So I've seen that phenomenon.
Well,
nobody knows exactly what it is, but the idea is there's some back roads in a certain spot up in northeast Oklahoma that a shining orb will appear, and it to me it appeared. several miles down from the road that we were waiting. You had to go down a dirt road and you have to be quiet. And then you see something
for the kids out there
kind of come up in the fog and the mist. And then this glowing orb just kind of appears over the top of the road. And it looks kind of like a dim headlight, or if somebody was carrying a lantern or something like that. Other people that have seen it, it's been photographed, and you can find photographs on the internet.
What's it called again?
That resemble the spook light.
I might have to go investigate spook light someday.
Yeah. Scientists say that there's certain gases in the area that could cause
Swamp
that phenomenon.
gas. Yeah,
swamp gas.
Like
Some people say it's a either a native party or a Civil War party continuing to look for their lost comrades or something like that.
Ooh, that's an interesting take on it.
But it was interesting. The road that I saw it on, we watched it, and it would come into the folds of the hills because it's a hilly part of the States, and it just disappeared into one of the folds in the road. And so we immediately walked down the road to where it disappeared in the fold. We couldn't find it anywhere, and it was far enough away that we put a friend down there where it appeared, and if it was somebody walking with a lantern, we would have easily heard its footsteps on the road or the grass or anything.
Does it always appear in the same area, or is it kind of just roughly the same area?
There's roughly about a 2 square mile area that it can appear in. Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We'll have to go field trip that one.
Yeah.
This is kind of this one might answer the second question, because the second question is, have you ever seen a ghost?
Oh, yeah. I've never laid eyes on what I thought would be a ghost, but I did live in a haunted house. So
I heard it a lot.
There was a time when I was living in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, and one of the oldest houses, which Tahlequah was one of the first settled towns in the state. So there was a house that was built in 1865. It was
got some ghosts in that house.
It was a 2-story house, and also, Tahlequah is also the end of the Trail of Tears, and where the Cherokee Indian capital is, and all that kind of thing. So yeah, that house, lots of strange things happened in that house. And so we were a bunch of people in our early 20s. We're college kids, and the house was amazing because it had 7 bedrooms, and in those days the rent on the house was like $300 a month. So as long as you come up to $70, you could live in one of the bedrooms. Yeah, it was this great communal living.
You get a ghost at that price point.
So what do you do if you're in early 20s and you suspect the house is haunted? You automatically bring in the Ouija board.
Oh, that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
You guys did that for real?
We did that over a series of nights, and we would establish this dialogue with a ghost that supposedly lived only upstairs and was afraid to come downstairs because one of us had a dog. And then we would talk to every once in a while, like a little girl. And some of my roommates would actually talk about like hearing the pitter patter of little feet if they were going to the bathroom late.
I would be gone.
It would be, right.
I'm not sleeping.
Rent was low. It's $70. Where else are you going to live? Right. You're kind of in on this. Sometimes doors would just open, and sometimes when we would talk to the Ouija board, they'd go, well, go search upstairs. And we would actually have a rehearsal spot upstairs, and a bass guitar would have been moved over and unplugged from its amp, and you could see like this direct line where the bass guitar was moved and the cord had come out and the whole thing.
You're making me think of this is like a plot to a good horror film.
Yeah, it would be. And the final night we did it, what made us all give up was like, because we would just take turns asking questions, and we would have 3 people on the board at once, right? Moving the oracle around.
I've never.
With one finger each.
Yeah.
You never done it? Okay.
Well, no.
It can be, it takes at least 2 people, I think, and you can do it with 3 is optimal. Anyways, and it's about just having, like this letter set out, and then you have your little oracle on the top or your piece, and then you put your finger on it, and then, with team, it just kind of guides itself to letters, and so you piece it out letter by letter by letter, and that's how you get the answer.
Then at some point, though, you guys were like, we've gone too far.
We were on it, and I asked it, okay, here's something that nobody knows. What is the total of the collective change we each have in our pockets? And it gave us a number, and I said, all right, everybody empty your pockets. It was dead on to the cent.
Okay, I'm out.
So, yeah, that was it. That was the end of that. And sure enough, the house got sold out. The landlord sold the house out from under us, and we all had to move. That's how I ended up moving to Tulsa. And we had to leave within a month. And the next people that bought it, they held on to it for a while, and they were going to renovate it, put it on the National register for storage. I heard they were there a month when that house was bulldozed, and now it's still just an empty lot. Yeah, so nothing.
That's a pretty, even though you didn't see a ghost, that's a pretty good ghost story.
Yeah.
You delivered it well too.
It's pretty. Thanks.
Well, so you grew up in Inola, and for people that might not know you, you could look up a lot of your music online. But you're a longtime Tulsa musician. You're somebody that I've watched. I consider you like just an amazing performer. I love to watch you play. I loved your ability to perform as a guitar player is just one of my favorite to watch. And I think that you're kind of known as not the only one. There's a lot of people, but you kind of embody the Tulsa sound. Like you're the guy that's kind of leading that charge right now. And I'd like to know kind of how you got there. Like, where did you start with music? Kind of where, have you genre wise, where were you? Like, where was your head at? And then kind of what has your journey been like? How did you get to where you are today and doing the kind of music that you are today?
Well, let's see. I was born in Tulsa when I was 4 years old. My parents were part of the first organic movement, as they like to call it. And they didn't want to live in Tulsa anymore. And my father, who had went to school in Inola, he bought 10 acres of land and moved the family out there. So
how many brothers, sisters, just you?
I didn't have any brothers or sisters at the time, but I ended up with a younger brother and a younger sister.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm the oldest of three. So we moved out to Inola, and I was a part of the 13-year club in Inola. That's kindergarten through 12. Yeah. And they put this special picture in the annual, like if you were part of the 13-year club and you made it all the way.
He made it.
Which was, yeah. There were 56 people in my graduating class.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that thing. When I was 8, I always loved music. I always loved to hear it on the radio. And when I was growing up, I had this little small record player with a single speaker. And my aunt gave me a hand-me-down record of Sly and the Family Stone's Greatest Hits. And that was my thing. I would just listen to it all day. And it was great. And it was educational, too. My favorite tune of his he would do was dance to the music. And if you're a little kid, you may not know much about music. And Sly lays it out for you in that tune. He starts out by picking out every instrument. All we need is a drummer. For people don't need a beat, yeah. And then you hear some drums, and then you add some bass, and you talk about the guitar and everything.
It's like 101.
It really
How to
would.
play
We were
music.
talking about what's in a
lesson.
band. What's in a band? Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, my favorite part was I'm gonna add a little guitar, make it easy to move your feet. And he'd play, and I was like, okay, that's it for me. I want, and I had this little plastic guitar. So at 8 years old, my mom wanted to get me, I really wanted guitar lessons. And so at the First Baptist Church in Inola, there was a nice lady, Leona McGee, and she taught piano, but she also could teach some guitar. And I started there, and we were going through the method books. I was an okay student, and I think about 11 or something like that, I got burned out and quit,
No, really?
And then I wanted to get back into it at about age 13 or something like that because, I'd had my first breakup with my first girlfriend, and I was of course we were going to get married. I had it all planned out. You had life all planned out at 13. How things were going to go. Ooh. And then she just dumps me for a guy. Do you
remember his name?
Great ahead of me. Nah,
screw him.
Yeah. He had a leather jacket and ring. I mean, yeah, he was styling. I was a nerd, and I wanted to get back into it. But my Leona, who taught at the church, she still thought that rock and roll was the devil's music. She didn't want to show me rock and roll. And by that time, I was listening to the radio and just really
playing with a Ouija board. Her
husband, not at that age. Yeah, no, my parents would let me have a Ouija board.
I swear, I'm just playing music, Mom.
Her husband was the head of the music department at Rogers State College in Claremore, Oklahoma. And at that time, Hank Thompson, who was a country star, he was doing the Hank Thompson School of Music. So
He was actually teaching it?
Well, yeah, he was on faculty there.
Really?
Yeah. So the guy that wrote Six Pack to Go, you could go to Claremore, Oklahoma and get a 2-year degree in country music if you wanted to.
That's wild. I didn't know that.
And it had quite, it ended up, I didn't appreciate it until later, but it had quite the faculty. Like almost everybody that played in Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, Leon McCullough, all those guys, they were on faculty out there, and you could go out there. And
how long did they run that program? Do you know?
Only a handful of years. The university
that's like a
dropped
documentary film right there. You should do. That's something that
there should be a little mini documentary on it, because people were coming as far. I knew there was people coming from Canada and stuff like that. I couldn't be involved in the program, and I didn't know much about it because I was 13 years old. Mm-hmm. But the director said, "Look, there's this guy on the faculty. I think he might be able to show Paul some rock and roll. His name's Junior." And so that's how, for a year and a half, my mom would drive me to Claremore, and I would take lessons from Junior Brown. Mm-hmm. And he had his original Get Steels before his career had taken off, but he was still playing with Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, what else did he do? Was he just with Bob Wills, or didn't he do
He also did honky tonks. He did his own thing, but he did honky tonks around the area, too.
How old was he when you were taking lessons
like
from
that.
him?
I don't know.
Like,
I don't know.
Man.
He wasn't old then, Okay. I mean, Junior's one of those guys. It's just nobody knows.
He could be somewhere in that range.
If you buy the right cowboy hat, they'll never know your age. I'll say that.
That's true.
Yeah, prove me wrong, but think about that, folks at home. But if you buy the right cowboy hat, you can definitely.
That's a heck of an opportunity, though.
Who knows? Yeah, it was really cool. And I was his youngest student, so he saw an impressionable mind and would just warp me every week with something weird. He would just come up with something.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. But what the thing I learned over law from Junior is that you can mix the country, you can mix the rock and roll, you can mix the honky tonk, you can even play some funky stuff, whatever, but it's all really roots of the same thing. It all goes back to the blues.
Yep.
Everything relates back to the blues, so he showed me, he just brought me that,
Do you know where he is today, or is he still with us?
Oh yeah, Junior. Yeah, he still occasionally tours. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
He came and played Canes about a year ago, and I sat in with him, and I got to be on stage with him, and
dude, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Tulsa's unique like that, in that I'm always telling people this that aren't musicians. They don't realize, like, we're really spoiled for what we have as far as our history and the talent around here. Like, you don't realize, especially like with guitar players, how many like world-class guitar players are from Tulsa, like right now, like guys like that I could go like, no, he's like as good as you could be anywhere. Like, he's Nashville good, he's LA good. Yeah. You are that good. And there's other guys too that are just, they happen to live here, but they're also like, I've traveled enough. I've been to other cities and they don't have that many. When I grew up in Norman, and we did not have, it was always kind of a joke that we're always outsourcing, bands to OKC from Tulsa, but it doesn't really go the other way around, Yeah. And I think it is true. Like, I didn't have that many, I didn't have anything like what you guys had up here. Mm-hmm. Like, it just didn't have, there were some decent musicians around OU, but not anything like Tulsa. And then when I moved up here, I was really shocked to be like, meeting different players and different musicians that were, they're just on another level. But I think a lot of it is, it takes that cultural experience. It's a cultural thing to become, like, it doesn't happen on your own. You're collaborating with these other artists. You're hearing them play as a young kid, and that you develop into something from that. It's really hard for someone to do that, especially before we had like the internet, where you're like, if you're in a small town somewhere and your only access to music is kind of, whatever's on the radio, right? You're not going to develop the same way. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. No, that's the analogy I use for it is, you used to have to go someplace and smell the music. You have to go to those smelly places, those smoky places and things like that. And with the internet experience, I mean, it is amazing. And that's why we have so many young people that are really shredding on guitar, is because now you can flip open a screen and see the guy who actually played the tune. There he is. You can move his fingers like he is, and things like, we did not have anything.
Yeah, you even have videos with famous guitar players saying, hey, this is how I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then showing you actually how to do it.
Yeah. Me and my friend Mike Sadowake, who's my favorite guitar player in the state, he grew up in Seminole, Oklahoma, and we'd be joking to each other about how, like, we remember, like, you'd remember the one day that the new guitar magazine was out and available at the local grocery store, you know, and you'd get a ride down there and you'd hope you'd find it and somebody didn't buy it before you.
Dude, that's,
you know, but you're looking at these music and it's like this tablature and things like that. And you might have borrowed a tape from somebody and you're just trying to figure out, you know.
It's a different world.
Yeah.
It's a totally, it's so funny to hear you say it because I remember that too, but it's like, that is so long ago. Like, it's not that long ago, but it's also it's just so different how kids do things today.
Information has multiplied at such a fast rate at this day and age that, yeah, exactly. What was only like a handful of years ago in the span of time is now, you know, now it's old history.
It's a blip on a radar.
It's crazy.
It's just,
it's really crazy how quickly information has expanded. I had a music history teacher that talked about how, like, the amount of knowledge in the world as it goes along, you know, it takes less and less time to double each time, you know, throughout human history. And now, right, the amount of information and technology available, it just keeps doubling at a shorter.
Yeah, I heard someone
rate.
say it like it's just the access to it. So like you could be in a third world country somewhere with a smartphone. You have faster access to information than President Clinton did when he was in the White House.
Yeah.
If you wanted to, like, hey, I want to look something up, ChatGPT, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's like the president of the United States didn't have that.
Yeah.
Even just
and that's not that long ago.
Not that long ago.
Right.
Really not that long ago.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting.
It is. So how do you think that because you teach guitar and you've taught quite a bit as well, haven't you?
Oh yeah. After the haunted house incident,
had to start making some real money to pay that rent.
Let me insert that story in my timeline. Yeah, because in Tahlequah I was playing in grunge bands and playing around and. I had a music instructor that I knew from Tulsa. His name was Randy Weimer, and he would also come down and teach at NSU. And he said that, there's an opening for teaching at Guitar House of Tulsa. I'll put in a good word for you if you're thinking about moving to Tulsa, and maybe you can get down there and do some lessons and things like that. And I walked into Guitar House of Tulsa back when it was on its original location on Admiral Street. And I've taught guitar there ever since. It's been...
How many students do you have at a time? Is it gonna?
It fluctuates. Yeah, I've been through 3 ownerships. When I started things like that, I was real hungry, so sometimes it would get crazy. It would get up to like 55 to 60 students a week, and those were half hours. And that's a lot.
It's a long day.
It really is. It made for some long days. So now I've scaled back. I'm roughly about 30, 35 a week, something like that. Especially since if your music career kind of progresses, well, then you're also in that at my stage in the game, I'm also the one in the hot seat for like, well, if it's going to progress, a lot of things are up to you. So I have to devote more time to it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I've scaled back to like,
I just wondered too, like
30,
that gives you
students a week.
That gives you like an interesting pulse on kind of where young people are at. You know what I mean? That like you might not have if you've stopped teaching or interacting with young people. And it seems like, do you see... I see this with my son. He's playing guitar. He's taking lessons from Teddy Scott right now. And it's like a lot of the...
Speaking of good guitar players.
Yeah, great guitar. Happens to live here. Happens to be...
Also an amazing human.
But they play the same songs. You know what I mean? Not that they don't play new songs, but it's almost like Bill Burr had a joke bit about like, he's like, I stopped listening to music when they stopped having guitar solos. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, that's about right. But when you stop doing that, it really... I don't know if you're going to play guitar, it kind of peaked at a point, or like I don't hear a lot of new, you hear Jack White, you hear Black Keys. There's bands come out that they do have solos. They have a lot of guitar heavy stuff, but do you see kids kind of playing the same, like the classics still hang in there and they're just like, what are kids playing?
Pretty much. Yeah. It's very interesting. Like, first thing I will say is that, when kids come along, it's usually some influence from a parent that they really got into some great classic rock sounds, and they, most of them do. They end up wanting to learn, like the Zeppelin riffs and the, and Black Sabbath's Paranoid riff. And
they're never good. Like there's some that you just can't.
A lot of them are classic music, driven. And that was the thing is that was just a period of time where the greatest music was made, and the technology had reached a spot, and and the talent had reached a spot that, you know, there was this period where the greatest records of all time were made, and we've the talent is still there. I think it's still out there, but we have given what we've given away in convenience of technology. We've lost in actually having, you know, these guys to make some of the greatest sounds of all time. But I don't want to stray too far away. But that's what kids are kind of interested in, you know. The other interesting thing that has changed over the years is when I started teaching at Guitar House, I was mostly kids because we were a new instrument store. Guitar Center comes into town, and when Guitar Center opened in the city, they were the big corporate music store.
Those guys.
They carried every line that every music store ever carried.
Yeah.
And so like 5 of the biggest hangout music stores closed within the first 3 years the Guitar Center was open. And so when it undergone this latest purchase, you know, Drew Wynn owning the store now, it's a vintage guitar store now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's primarily vintage because Drew was a vintage guitar dealer before he even
so you see an older clientele coming in.
That's it. I'm 80% adult, and so yeah. And so it's a different dynamic. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm still in touch with a couple of kids and things like that, and they're there. And I have probably about 6 or 7 kids maybe on the schedule, but the rest are all adult, and that's really a great experience. You know, for some, it's the cheapest therapy they could ever afford. I mean, you know, sometimes they don't even crack their taste. They want to come in and just want to talk about themselves or talk about what I'm doing, or, you know,
probably,
and that's their little break from
just
life.
As good.
Yeah, that's a break from life. And if you don't have any aspirations of hitting the stage, well, then that's cool. We can just go at your own pace. I'm not going to be cracking the whip at you, and we can, you know, strum around on some CCR chords and have a good time.
But nobody, I mean, I don't think anybody ever, like, I've met a lot of people, like, as I'm playing, like, older people, like, no one ever is, like, later in life and going, God, I wish I didn't know how to play the piano.
Yeah.
You know what I wish I didn't do is learn how to play the guitar.
There we go.
You know, it's always like, God, it's always some lawyer or doctor going, yeah, I wish I'd learned how to play music, you know. I love music, but I never learned, you know. But so, like, as far as your music, I know you've done a lot of stuff over the past, I don't know, 2 decades or more. What are you working on now?
Well, you know, my whole connection with the Tulsa thing really came from, I was, you know, when I moved back to Tulsa, it was almost kind of cool for me to not really have grown up inside Tulsa because there was a lot of things that I discovered that I necessarily didn't take for granted. Right, that wasn't available. So I was able to kind of view it from an outsider's perspective, and I was playing in a really popular band in the area called Rewake at the time, and when that broke up,
what genre were they?
We were a rock band,
okay,
of sorts. Yeah, we were a rock band. We played around town, and when that project fell apart, I was really wanting to start my own project and figure out, you know, what I was going to do, and I couldn't sing high notes.
I'm like,
so this is a bit about, you know, and so I'm like, well, what am I going to do? I can't sing any high notes, you know. You ain't getting me to do any Freddie Mercury. You're not going to do any Queen covers. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to do Zeppelin? No, you're not going to do any Zeppelin. So that's when I heard my first J.J. Cale record, and I was just like, oh, wait a minute.
You can just
here we go.
Here's
this guy. Around. He's mixing country elements. He's mixing rock elements. You know, and it's not about vocal prowess. It's about the timing. You know, and it's so much about it is setting a mood and setting a scene and setting the timing, and not necessarily super vocal ability or anything like that. And that's what snagged me. That's what snagged me.
And that's what you're good at. Definitely,
groove, you know,
you really excel at that.
And a lot of things I've been working on. I've been trying to get funk music together, and I tried to trying to get this Jerry Reed and Chet Atkins fingerstyle thing together and work on blues fingerstyle. And he encompassed all of that. You know, it was all in one record. It was all there, you know, and so that's when I thought, okay, well, I want to head in this direction. And the beautiful thing about Tulsa is I was doing it for a while, and then eventually, like the original Tulsa musicians, they would come out of the woodwork, and they wouldn't have copped a big attitude for me trying to do this stuff. They actually was, you know, they'd take me aside and like, oh, well, you're interested in that? Well, let me tell you about the time me and JJ did this or that, or, you know, and they would show you how to do it. And, so that would be the time I dropped out of college and just made, the Tulsa music scene my college in a way. I'd seen my first Steve Pryor show right about 2004, and it was such a magical experience. I was just like, well,
it was crazy.
You can either finish your music degree or you can follow this guy. It's one or the other, And so I just thought, okay, well, I'm just going to teach guitar lessons and just show up to every show that he does. Yeah.
It's a lot cheaper.
And then years down the road, we steadily became friends. And then he started, having me on his shows from about 2009 till the time he passed away in 2016. Yeah. And it was
that's a heck of an opportunity.
There's still things that he was able to do with the guitar that can't even be quantified.
Mm-hmm.
And he may be just this last of this mystical kind of guys that could conjure something into the amp where you could see he would have a simple setup and you could see what he was doing and you could see his fingers moving, but there was so many licks and so many sounds he was able to get that he may have just taken with him. We don't know, Yeah. I still dig into, his bootlegs. Probably my most listened to record still is this bootleg that I got from him. I'm really trying to dig into it, figure out, where he was. And some of it is just magic, finite details of how you hold your pick and where you put your fingers. And
that's like Teddy Scott. And he's the funniest guy that like he can pick up. I have a couple videos of him like picking up like a terrible ukulele or something and like shredding AC/DC on it or something, just being silly. But it's like, yes, having a great instrument can help to a degree, but it's the player. It's like I could give you or him a pretty inferior guitar and you could work at it to get a tone out of it, but it's like, it's that working at it that's like, that's the art. And it's not, of course you love to hold a $5,000 guitar or whatever, but that's not where the magic happens. I don't think it's the art of getting that tone out of it, that almost really is like a lot of that. Like you feel like a lot of that's just intuitive. It's like a thing you have to figure out. You can't really just like, it's not like a formula kind of thing. It's like, you got to see what, as an artist, what am I working with and what can I do with it? Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I totally agree with that 100%. There's so many things that were kind of Tulsa specific about the relation to the instrument that came about from players like Steve Pryor and Don White. And I thought, well, what am I going to offer to the world if I'm not, if I'm not going to be like the greatest singer or something like that? And then it kind of looped back to me being a guitar student. And when you learn about blues, you learn about, they talk about regional things. They talk about the Texas blues, they talk about Chicago blues, they talk about the blues coming out of Memphis and the differences between. And when you talk about jazz, you talk about, well, the New York jazz, and then there was the jazz coming out of Kansas City, and then West Coast jazz. And I thought, well, what about Tulsa? Maybe I can offer, I got very interested in the art form of doing something regions specific, because I was never going to be the greatest guitar player or the fastest guitar player or something like that. But if I offered something specific that you couldn't necessarily get anywhere else, that's what I put as the focal point of my art.
That's smart. I mean, that's kind of like, I've talked with a lot of people about that, the pursuit of creativity, the pursuit of excellence, whatever you're doing. Like a lot of that comes back to having something to aim at and not trying to be everything to everybody, but like that thing that really is true to you or that you're really, connecting with, and then people attract to that. But if you go at it with like you said, like, oh, I'm going to try to be the greatest guitar player, like even the greatest guitar players of all time, they didn't come at it like that.
It's true.
Hendrix, he wasn't aiming at like, oh, I'm going to be on Rolling Stone. I think he was aiming at something very specific and got really, really good at that. And then everything else kind of builds on top of that.
Yeah. Hendrix, he not only was the greatest guitar player of all time, but he quite possibly could have been the coolest guy ever. In human history. I'm not sure.
He might have.
Miles Davis was really cool, but
if you're really, there's probably a way to rate coolness, and he just happened to be off the scale cool.
He was, And
I'm trying to think who could be cooler.
In a short amount of time of his period, I mean, he really was only active.
I mean, what about Otis Redding?
He really only came into things 67 through 70, something like that. And that short span of time, think about the body of work that Jimmy recorded
in 3-4 years,
and live shows and different bands that he did and different innovations he brought to guitar playing. There really isn't a guitar player out there right now that isn't in some way influenced
That's true.
by Jimmy, you know. I mean, arguably, unless you go back to the classical guys or the gypsy jazz guys or whatever.
Didn't he basically make the Stratocaster famous? Like it was not a big deal before him.
It wasn't too desirable of an instrument. You know, everybody thought it sounded pretty thin. Yeah. The only other really progenitor.
Which is your choice guitar most of the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was Steve Pryor's choice guitar, and it was also Eldon Shamblin's choice guitar back in the Texas Playboy days and Kane's Ballroom. Leo Fender was a huge Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys fan. And so anytime he came out with something brand new, he would send it down there and have those guys check it out.
Really?
An amp or something like that. Yeah. And so that's how Eldon Shamblin got, it's one of the low numbers, or not like one of the very first Stratocasters ever made. And he grabbed it and thought, oh yeah, this is cool. And he played it for the rest of his career.
I wonder how much that's worth today.
It's 54. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Joe Bonamassa owns it now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think? I think that you perform, I think you're talented in a lot of ways, but I think that where you really excel is live performance. I think you have a way of capturing the audience, of working your instrument, just all around. You're a hell of a performer. What do you think makes a great performer? Or maybe where's your head at when you're trying to do a great performance?
Really, I think, one of the aspect I always have in my mind, because there was a period of time that I was studying jazz and things like that, and then and I've got these heroes like Steve or like Jimmy and things like that. Whereas you have bands that always come out and you know what to expect. Like we see the Beatles show. They would just do kind of that show, and they would play the song the same way. Jimmy never played his songs the same way twice. Mm-hmm. He never really did. And the whole jazz thing, John Coltrane was always switching band members and things like that. And in Tulsa, I got into a situation because, we talked about how good the musicians are from Tulsa. Well, one of the byproducts of that is bigger artists who have bigger tours, and bigger money to spend are always, picking up the rhythm section people. They're picking up the drummers, the bass players, and that's continuing on today. And it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's really cool to see musicians able to still have a career in this day and age and live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they'll come and share and everything like that. So I'm not necessarily griping about that, but I get into these situations to where it's like, sometimes I'll have a month of shows, and every week I've got a different lineup, for a different show. And so I get into performing the song each time and just focusing on making that song the best it could possibly be for that time.
Taking different things from those different musicians. Like, you got a different rhythm section. How are we going to do this?
Yeah. So the drummer is not going to play it as like on the record. He may be playing it something faster or slower or something more sparse or funkier or something like that. And I'll just count off the tune, and then I'm just kind of reacting in that situation to what's going on. And sometimes, people they want that consistency, and they'll say, well, man, you were doing this loud rock thing the first time I saw you, and then I come to you this week, you didn't even turn your distortion pedal on the whole song, and it was the same song. Why did you play it clean this time?
People really complain about that.
And I'll be, well, I mean, I don't know if it's a complaint or not. It's just an observation.
Yeah.
I tell them, I say, I'm kind of like Tally's Cafe. Consistency isn't my thing.
Yeah.
or what Jimi Hendrix's favorite quote: "If you want to hear it like it is on the record, well, go buy the record." Yeah. That was his thing. And so sometimes that holds, sometimes I feel like that holds me back, and sometimes I feel like that's a stumbling block on me for putting out albums, because when an album comes out, I've got to think about well, now what version of this tune am I going to do?
Yeah.
What am I going to come up with that's going to be the one that people want to listen to over and over and over and over and over? What decisions do I make, in the studio? And sometimes that can definitely.
Do you find sometimes you have somebody else make those decisions for you because you're too married to the music? It's hard to make that call, like what's the best way to do this? Or
I don't know. I seem to carry this air about myself, and I'm the least person to, be observational about it. But usually when I'm working with somebody, they just let me do whatever I want. I don't know.
maybe they're scared of you.
Maybe the people I work with, they probably just don't know what I'm doing. They're like, where's he going with this?
If
you ask the bass player on my gig or the drummer on my gig, if you pull them aside and interview them each, I'm sure that their take on what's going on is going to be entirely different.
I think the producers I think people like that.
Yeah.
I know we had Kendall Osborne on, and he was talking about as a sound engineer, and he said, one of his buddies said something like, if you give me 25% of your direction, you're really just getting up with like 75% me. You know what I mean? And his point was like, the more direction you can give a producer, that you can give an engineer, it really helps them, because otherwise it's just going to sound like something they did. And so I think that probably helps. I think it helps to know, well, maybe you don't know, but helps to be at least like, this is my sound. This is what I'm going for. Keeps you sounding like you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's really good to work with people that let you have your vision and things like that. I've definitely heard horror stories in the golden record days, and met plenty of famous artists and things like that. And I'll bring up my favorite song and they'll go, "Oh, that piece of junk, man, I wanted to do this other thing with it." And the producer just wasn't letting me do it, and yeah. So it's really cool to, that I'm able to work with people that kind of, let me try what I want to do.
You've traveled a lot with your music. You've had the chance to play on a lot of stages. Has there been like a performance that really meant something to you? Like it could be a big performance, a small performance, but something that you just really, it meant a lot to you and you're always going to stick with you that you can think of.
The one I can think about is there was a performance in France, and I'd been to France a couple of times, and we were playing this venue in a town called Belfort. And what a lot of French towns do is, like, for their Cain's Ballroom size stages and things like that, a lot of them convert the old armories that were in their citadels. Yeah, a lot of them become, so this was like an old armory where they used to stash gunpowder and stuff like that. Yeah, but inside it looked like just a very smaller version of Cain's Ballroom. It's very interesting. And we were scheduled to do the tour. And the way the tour was going to work out is I was going to use a drummer that I'd befriended in France, a very skilled drummer. And he passed away a month before we were supposed to do the tour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Old guy, young guy?
Young fella, yeah. Mm-hmm. Had developed a very rare heart disease and died right after a gig.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right after the gig, not before the...
he'd finished a gig,
but he didn't get to play with you.
No. As I heard, he started having heart complications after a gig, and they immediately took him to a hospital. Couldn't figure out anything, and then he was released and went home, and then passed away. Yeah, passed away, and it was a very, very, very emotional thing, and this was his hometown, and so the first stop on our tour. And first stop on our tour, I was Matt Teagarden was able to fill this tour, and the first stop there was his life celebration in this venue, and we were the first band up, and we played through our set, and Steve Pryor had always done throughout his career, he'd come up with his version of a cover of Dire Straits' "So Far Away." And, whereas Dire Straits' "So Far Away" was a 80s radio hit, and it was kind of up and sort of poppy and things like that, he made it into a very emotional sort of rock ballad that went through a bunch of dynamic changes and different bridges and things, and made this big mountain. And the live version of Steve doing it is roughly 8.5 minutes long. Yeah.
Wow.
And if you don't play it just like that, like the way he did it, it doesn't hold the same. So there's no short version of doing this. And we saved it for an encore, and the crowd gave us an encore. We came out and did it, and not only was it special to do that during the Nils's life celebration, the drummer. It turns out a lot of France is Martin Knopfler fans. So when we hit the chorus, they just start singing So Far Away at the chorus with us, as if they knew this tune or had heard us.
And you guys didn't
before.
see that coming. It just
I did not see that coming. It was just and it was just this
That's
amazing.
That's like that
special
magic
moment.
chemistry moment that you can't.
And everything, and Pryor had passed away several years before we did that tour. So it's just all these things coming at once, I'm missing Nils, the drummer, my friend in France. I'm at this live celebration. I'm in this place looks just like, my favorite venue back here in Tulsa. And I'm also missing Steve Pryor, and all these things are converging, at once. And the crowd and the band is kind of the same entity and moving. And I don't know if there'll ever be experience like that again. I'm not sure.
About what year was that?
It was moving. I don't want to get the year wrong, but it was...
Like long ago? It was 10 years ago or 5 years ago?
No, it was about 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 to 4 years ago.
That's a good story.
Yeah, and it was,
What do you see in the next, say, 5 years? What do you have your eyes on? What do you hope to accomplish?
I don't know where it's gonna go. I really don't. I really hope to accomplish, focus on doing some more recordings and things like that. When Steve Pryor, my guitar hero, passed away, it was kind of a big deal, and it took me a long time, because he was always like this leaning post for every musician in Tulsa. You could go out and you could play some shows, and they could be fun or they could be not fun. But if you needed to recharge the Oasis, you could always go see Steve's show. You could always go see him play, and you just feel all right. Everything was right in the world, And not only me, but I totally felt like I did not know where I fit in the universe, because, somebody says, well, you're next Steve Pryor. Well, those shoes, those were shoes I couldn't possibly fill. And, that Oasis was gone, and I couldn't really ping any ideas off him, and hear his stoic response or anything like that. So it took me a while to get my bearings and figure out how to put it on a record. So from 2015 till just a month ago, I hadn't put out another record. So I hope to make that a faster process.
I didn't know you just released another record a month ago?
Just last Friday. Yeah.
How did I not know this?
Yeah, just last Friday. It went worldwide. Yeah.
Well, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
What's the name of the record?
My Bad Side Wants a Good Time.
And where'd you track it?
We tracked the basic tracks in the church studio. Yeah.
Oh, I know you were tracking there. I just didn't know it was all leading up to an actual release.
Yeah, to release. It's out on vinyl and CD. And
I'm going to graphic that in there so people can look it up. But that's amazing. How do you feel about it?
I feel the response has been really good. Yeah. We had a release show, both locally. People like it, and we're getting really good reviews. We just got picked up by Classic Rock Magazine in the UK, and they gave us 8 out of 10. So, and this is the first record that I've put out that's actually going under like real people, real record reviewers. No matter, don't let them place a value on your art. No, but actual people that will just pan your record if they don't like it. But in almost all cases, I've been getting good reviews all around. I got.
Well, I can't wait to hear it. I feel like an idiot that I didn't. I knew you had been working on something, but I didn't know it had released, and I can't wait to hear it now.
Yeah, it was a long time coming.
I'll give you a Spotify review. How about that?
So I need to do that, and I need to catch up to the other challenge that comes with that. Now, if you put out a record, if you put out a work, is like, well, all right, now what are you going to do to continually push it? And so now joining that new generation of artists that are doing a lot of reels and things like that, I'm just kind of at the cutoff period to where it's like I was used to, like musical heroes being like Prince. Did anybody know anything about Prince? No, they didn't. Did Prince tell anybody anything? No, he didn't tell, he was this mysterious guy, and then you would pay to see this mysteriousness and show up on stage and things like that. But now everybody wants to know everything on their social media about what it's like to load in and what it's like to do this and how do you feel about this
BTS.
and I'm seeing so many artists, and I don't plan on getting much into this, doing commentary that doesn't have anything to do with their art.
But they want to feel like they know you. They want to feel connected to you.
They
That's
do.
what it is.
They do. And
You're doing an interview at the studio.
Exactly. This is me branching out. This is kind of the thing, right? My hero Steve would tell me, he goes, making records is like sausage. You don't want to be around when they're making it.
I kind of agree with that. Like it's not fun. Like to me, it's not. Like I have friends who love being in the studio. Mm-hmm. I find it really annoying. Yeah. I really don't like being in the studio. Yeah. I know you have to do it, but I like it's not fun.
But exactly.
After about 10, 12 hours, it becomes really tedious.
It really
and
does.
Not. Yeah. But that's awesome, man. I appreciate you. Is there anything? We'll obviously check out say the name of the record again.
My Bad Side Wants a Good Time.
My Bad Side Wants a Good Time. And is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you'd like to talk about? Is there any questions for me that you have, or anything that you want to put out to the world?
Well, I would say what would be one thing out of all the interviews that you conducted on this subject that you feel like is a connective tissue between all of the people you have interviewed?
So the idea is Bound for Glory, obviously pulled that from Woody Guthrie. And to me, that always meant like this pursuit of excellence. Like I don't know where it's going to land, but I know that if we're giving it all I have, if I'm really trying to be honest, if I'm really pouring myself into it, we're going to end up in a good place. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me that the thing that people need, it is the passion. Like you have to, whatever it is that you're doing, you have to care about it. Some people don't. They just don't have a desire to create. They don't have a desire. And I don't know what gives people that, but the people that do have it, sometimes I think you land in unseen places, there's a lot of people that I was going to start out here. I never thought I'd be doing film and video stuff, but I was pursuing music for a long time. I still do music, but it's not my main focus. And I think that you have to have that passion, something that gets you out of bed in the morning, that's like driving you to do something better than you did yesterday. And and the people that are successful, I think that's what they do is I don't think it's even that complicated. It's like if you're on a positive trajectory, even if it's just a little bit each day, that's a good thing. You know what I mean? Like that's only going to land you in a place better than you used to be. And maybe that's a huge career. Maybe it's a mediocre career. Maybe it's not a career at all. Maybe it's something completely just like arbitrary to you that you're like, this is what I feel like is a success to me, whatever it might be. But I think that, that's the most important thing, because if you don't have that, I don't see how you move forward. You know what I mean? Or you don't have a reason to be doing anything. And everyone's passion is going to be different, obviously, but you got that spark in you, whatever it is. Feed that fire, because that'll keep you, from plateauing and from just kind of giving up or settling for, because it's just like anything. Even guys like Steve, I'm sure, were like, even towards like you're always trying to do better. You never like look at it and go like, well, that's perfect. I guess I'm done. Yeah,
that's it. You're right.
An artist, that's not an artist. If somebody does that, I don't think you're an artist. I think a true artist is always kind of digging in and like trying to do better, trying to get better. That's, I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well, I appreciate you coming on again, and I look forward to hearing the record. Cheers.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.